now by former aide to Tony Blair, Alastair Campbell, who's speaking at Europe's largest neurology conference today about the growing mental health crisis and its impact on the economy, along with broadcaster and counsellor Anna Williamson, who also has a particular passion for mental health and emotional well-being. Great to see both of you this morning. You've both suffered from mental health issues in the past. Alastair, how has it affected you being in lockdown and the pandemic?
Well, Anna and I, we're talking at this Brain Forum conference today, and we did a sort of pre-event a few weeks ago. And I don't know if Anna remembers, but I was a little bit manic at the time. I was kind of full of energy, and I was buzzing, and I was like, had all these kind of crazy ideas going on. Not all crazy, but, you know, some good ones in there. And subsequently, I had a very, very, very bad crash. I had about one of the worst crashes I've had for quite a long time, actually. And, you know, one of the things we're talking about today is at the Brain Forum conference is this idea of, you know, that what they're calling the second pandemic is actually going to be the tsunami of psychiatric and psychological distress that comes out of this. Now, mine is as nothing, I have to say, for those who've lost loved ones, people like yourself, Kate, and give my love to Derek. Derek and I go back a long, long way.
Certainly do.
People like yourself who are really, you know, struggling with life and death, the people on the front line. And the other thing, Mind, but both Anna and I are ambassadors for Mind. Mind did a huge survey last week, 16,000 people. And I think it's fair to say that those with existing mental health conditions are the ones who are struggling most. Those who are in social housing, free school meals, families where the children get free school meals, and Black and Asian families, they are the ones that are struggling most. And there's a pattern there. And I think that what I really worry about, you know, even having watched David Davis blathering away just now, I'll try not to get too political on this. I really worry this government just does not get the issue of mental health at all, and isn't preparing for what is going to be, as the Royal College of Psychiatrists have said, a veritable tsunami of psychological distress as a consequence of this pandemic.
Anna, I think you gave birth to your second child. Congratulations, by the way. We haven't seen you since you've given birth to someone.
I know, hi guys.
Sort of 12 weeks, wasn't it? Lockdown happened 12 weeks after your second child came along. You heard Nikki speaking on the introduction to this chat about the anxiety and her overwhelming feelings of her children and being stuck in the house. You've got another toddler as well. How has it been for you, and how concerned, as Alastair was saying, are you for what's going to happen with society when eventually people start realising the impact lockdown has had beyond the physical?
We know, as Alastair said, through doing the Brain Forum, which is available today, brainforum.org, we know that there is a huge tsunami, as Alastair said, of the mental health fallout as a result of COVID. That's people with pre-existing mental health issues, such as myself and Alastair. Generalised anxiety disorder is what I have been diagnosed and managed very successfully for over a decade. But parents, just to kind of fly that flag to parents out there, it's been an enormously challenging time. I very historically and very publicly suffered with postnatal depression after the birth of my first son 3 years ago. I then had my daughter at Christmas, but then I hit lockdown 12 weeks after giving birth to her. And like a lot of the thousands and thousands of parents that have either given birth during lockdown or are dealing with children or newborns, it has been a highly anxious time, highly stressful time. We've been worrying about finances and that all-important network and support team that you need when you have children externally and that's able to come into your home has been ripped away. And I get thousands and thousands of messages from parents in particular who are struggling with their relationships, with their children, with their own mental health. And we know that anxiety, depression, insomnia, loneliness, all of this is massively on the increase. And as Alastair said, there is just not enough that has anyway historically gone into supporting mental health in the community. But we now know that waiting times, they're not just weeks and months, they're now years. And what we believe and what has come out of the Brain Forum today is it's early intervention, it's prevention better than cure. And we need to be looking at our own mental health because, like Alastair said, I actually didn't know that Alastair had a bit of a crash after we did the Brain Forum. And I hope you're looking after yourself, Alastair. But I spoke very publicly when we did it, that I had a bit of a fallout the moment that Boris Johnson announced lockdown, because for all the millions of anxiety sufferers out there, our response is the fight or flight adrenaline response. You want to get the hell out of there. So the minute you are legally told you can't leave your home, what happens? Everything blew up, and my anxiety absolutely ramped and my panic disorder ramped. And yet there has been very little provision for those that have had existing mental illness, and now the new wave of people that are starting the first flutterings of having a mental illness.
So advice that we can take for ourselves, to both of you, particularly, you've talked about parents, you've talked about those out of order. What about the youngsters in all of this? I have a particular concern for Darcy and Billy, not just for them, because suddenly their world is very unsafe, but actually all youngsters' world suddenly feels very unsafe. What can we do to sort of navigate our children through that? Anna, briefly for you, sorry, we could talk about this all day, couldn't we? But let's have you first.
I know it sounds like such a cliche, but talking, it's so key. And also talking to your children about what they're experiencing, and importantly, listening. Children are very switched on. My 3.5-year-old understands coronavirus. He understands the fallout already from this pandemic, his own social interactions, how it's meant he hasn't been able to hug his grandparents, for umpteen months. Children understand. So how we can best support our kids and our teens is by listening to what their concerns and their fears are and troubleshooting them straight away. That would be the first thing I do. Children can also access Childline up until the age of 19. That's for confidential advice if they want to do that. Mind Charity, who Alastair and I are particularly passionate about as well, they are there to help support and signpost. The key thing is, for children, for adults, this pandemic has affected everybody, is do not sit there, suffer in silence and think, oh, well, everybody's going through it, therefore I must just get on with it. If you're not feeling well, if you are feeling low mood or worrying feelings that become persistent, that's not to be confused with we all have ups and downs, and that's perfectly normal and okay. But if they're persistent, reach out, ask for help, talk to your GP. And unfortunately, we do have to shout a little bit loud and knock at the doors a little bit louder if we need that help.
Alastair, what would you like to add to that?
Well, I mean, for me, the key, both personally and for other people, is openness. I think being open, whether that's with your family and friends, and that's very difficult for some people, I accept that. But if it's not your family and friends, then find somebody else. And it might be a medical professional. And I think it's interesting talking to some medical professionals. A lot of GPs at the moment feel that people are not going to them with problems because they think, oh, the GPs are so busy with COVID. Yeah. And the thing about talking, I mean, when I had this kind of really bad crash, one of the things I was doing during it, I was talking. I wrote a piece which we published yesterday on tortoise. People can look it up there. I spoke to lots of different people, including lots of, well-known people, because that's in a way how you get the debate going sometimes. People like Gary Lineker and Jeff Stelling and Kelly Holmes and Deborah Meaden and Maro Itoje, the rugby player, Nicola Sturgeon, David Lammy. I talked to all these people about how they were coping. And what was really, really interesting about it was that the ones that I thought would be coping easily weren't so much. And the ones that I thought would struggle, like Kelly Holmes, I really thought would struggle. I know her well. I know she's like me. She has kind of very big ups and downs. Yeah. She had a whole new purpose going. But I think the only way you get to that is if, as Anna says, you can be open with somebody about how you're feeling. And then I'm afraid the key thing is, are the services there? And this is where the government has got to step up. They have got, do any of you, can you even tell me who the mental health minister is? No. It's Nadine Dorries. Now, when was the last time you saw Nadine Dorries talking about mental health? They all bang on about Brexit the whole damn time. Get focused on this, because it is the second pandemic. That's what we're talking about at the Brain Forum. And I honestly worry that we now have a government, compared to like Prime Minister of New Zealand, fair play to Nicola Sturgeon, I think she does get it.
We're just losing the signal to you there, Alastair. You come back. You've come back. Come back just at the end. But it's an important subject.
And it's huge.
Go on, Alastair.
I was just saying that there are governments around the world, New Zealand, Andrew Cuomo in New York, all across Europe, they're focusing on the mental health implications of COVID. Our government is not even on the pitch on this.